attendees, welcome to Do Spaces part 4. Is this part 4? Yes, I believe this is part 4 of our 5-part series with the Engler Entrepreneurship Group. Today we have a panel of different, I believe, business owners. So they are going to be kind of answering your questions about small business. So I'm going to give it away to Dr. Tom Field and have you guys all introduce yourself and do your thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. Well, hello, everybody. My name's Tom Field. I'm the director of the Engler Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We're super excited to be able to share 4 really great entrepreneurial stories from this region. Our process today, just so you kind of know how we're going to go at this, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and to share a little brief 3-minute overview of their journey as an entrepreneur. And then we'll get into some pre-structured questions just sort of to get the ball rolling. And then we can take questions either live or via Q&A or chat. And I'll do my very best to stay on top of that as we go along. What's really exciting about today's panel is that we have 4 entrepreneurs in sort of unique spaces or unique places in the journey as an entrepreneur. We have a founder of a company that has had an exit in the last, what has it been, 6 months, 5 months, which is really exciting. We have a co-founder of a brand new company looking at some really interesting challenges and solutions in the protein supply chain. We have it's hard to believe that both of these other 2 folks are actually mid-career entrepreneurs. They absolutely are way too young to be mid-career entrepreneurs, but it's super exciting because they are kind of making revenue, doing really well. One in the food space and one in the creative space. I think you're just going to love these stories. So with all that said, again, anything we can do for you, we look forward to that. The Engler program at UNL and engler.unl.edu. And let me just begin with, I think we'll just sort of, I'll randomize this and let's just start sort of from the most sort of mature stage and then back to the earliest stage. So why don't we start with Vishal
okay.
and let you talk a little bit about yourself and your journey, and then we'll go from Vishal to Hannah, and then Hannah to Jacqueline, Jacqueline to Jordan.
Sure. Okay. Well, I was going to say ladies first, but I guess we'll go the other way around. But anyway, so am I supposed to go ahead and talk about quantified ag now, Tom?
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So I started quantified ag that was been in June of 2014, and quantified ag is a company where we electronically monitored the health of feedlot cattle, basically, to be able to identify the sick animals sooner and also more accurately than the traditional methods. And so that's what quantified ag does. It's kind of, the thing people would say about it is, the short version of it is, it's kind of like a Fitbit for cattle, and that's more or less quantified ag. And I wasn't sure, Tom, how much you wanted.
Share a little bit, if you would, just kind of give people a perspective about Vishal, sort of like how did you get from not being at all interested maybe in ag for sure, and maybe not even in entrepreneurship, to actually founding a high-tech company?
Sure. Yeah. So when I was in high school, I went to high school in central Nebraska in a small town, grew up around agriculture. And in high school, my interests were design and technology. And one thing I knew for sure was that I was never going to work in agriculture. I just was not interested in it. And so that was my thinking back then. And that was just because I hadn't made the connection that my interest in design technology could be applied to the world of agriculture. That's all. But as I worked throughout my professional career, I worked in a lot of ag technology projects. And essentially, I was working on projects for other people, and I'd always wanted to start my own company. And at the time, I happened to be just kind of experimenting, messing around with drones. This was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and I was working with drones doing ag imaging on crops. And at that time, kind of everybody was trying to do that same thing. And so I thought, well, maybe I should do something a little bit more unique than that, rather than just doing what everybody else is doing. And I'd already worked on projects with the beef industry. So I thought, well, I did some research. Well, is anybody trying to apply that technology to the beef industry? And I couldn't find any examples. So I thought, well, I guess that's where maybe I should put my focus on. And the initial idea was trying to do thermal imaging of cattle from the air, trying to pick out the sick animals. And that was the initial idea that I launched a company with. And as I talked to people in the cattle industry, whether it's feedlot owners or cow-calf producers, backgrounders, so on and so forth, what I found out is that the pain point I was trying to solve, definitely the right pain point, because it was a pain for all of the cattle producers, but maybe the way I was trying to go about it wasn't the right approach, and had to pivot to a different approach, which was putting sensors on the animals instead, and that ended up being the right product market fit, and that's what we do today.
Awesome, thanks, Vishal.
Sure.
So Hannah, we'd love to hear about your journey and a little bit about Oak Barn Beef as well. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, Vishal, I've followed your story for so long and I never knew like the progression of it. So first off, that was really exciting to learn. Hi, my name is Hannah and I graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in the Engler program in May. So I'm freshly graduated and through COVID graduation, basically. But I started Oak Barn Beef when I was a sophomore in college, and Oak Barn Beef sells my family farms and now another family farm's premium beef directly to consumers across the United States. So this is a pretty popular idea now, and a lot of people are starting these businesses. And my why of why I started was why I wanted to connect producers and consumers. And what better way than just selling directly to people and putting a face to the farmer. And so that's kind of where we started. When I started being interested in this idea, I was pushed to research all these other companies who were doing similar things. And I found basically my dream company in Northern California, who shipped their beef, pork, and lamb directly to consumers across the United States. They had like retreats out on their ranch, and they marketed mostly through social media, which was low cost, effective marketing for them. And I asked them for an internship out there for the summer, and they didn't offer one, but that luckily they accepted me to move out there, and I lived on their ranch for the summer. And it really gave me a huge stepping stone into what I needed to do to grow Oak Barn Beef to what it is today and what I have plans for in the future. So since May, I've moved to my fiance's hometown. So moving the business has been really interesting. And I actually have another full-time job too. So I luckily work for a flexible company where I have Mondays off, so today worked out perfectly, and I can still ship the beef and do all of those other processes on the side. But my ultimate goal is to be full-time with Oak Barn Beef pretty soon in the future, hopefully.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. Let's go to Jacqueline. So Jacqueline, you're coming to us from South Dakota, and share your story and a little bit about your approach to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, I'm Jacqueline Hahn. I'm from Miller, South Dakota, which is in the middle of the state. I started Blavior Floral. It's had a couple different names over the years, but in 2010, when I was in high school, I started doing selling flowers to my high school friends, and then never stopped. So when I moved to Lincoln, I got more into the wedding industry, and then I fell in love and got married and moved to Miller, South Dakota. Now I've got the retail shop here in town, and at the heart of it, we're just here to help people love each other better. I'm here for everybody for their birthdays, anniversaries, when they lose a grandma, when they get married. So we do a little bit of everything, just helping people out. Helping people love each other better. So that's a little bit about that. Anything else, Tom?
So you might share also that you also happen to be married to another entrepreneur. So you might share just a little bit about like that whole world of that partnership of families, two entrepreneurs working in two sort of separate industries, how that all fits together.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out still. Tyler, my husband, he's a great guy. Everybody loves him. But Tyler is a rancher, so he ranches with his dad, kind of similar to what Vishal, they do. Vishal would be maybe somebody who would want to sell to Tyler. But yeah, they farm cattle, and then Tyler also sells beef direct to customer, just like Hannah. So yeah, we're still growing the beef business. We started in June, so that's pretty early in the stages. We're still trying to get the ball rolling with that. But yeah, so we both work a lot. That's the season of life we're in. We don't have kids, so we just work and work.
Awesome. Well, there it is, right? I mean, if entrepreneurship were easy, everybody would want to do it. Awesome. So thanks for that. Great introduction. And Jordan, we'll go to you. And you have this very unique entrepreneurial journey, and so we'd love to hear what you're up to.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Bader. I grew up in north central Nebraska, a very small agricultural community, and my family has a small cow-calf operation. So I was very rooted in agriculture. In my childhood, as well as through college, I attended the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and was in the College of Ag. I was very fortunate to be one of the first students of the Engler Entrepreneurship Program when it was founded in 2010. So the program is certainly very special to me, and I would not be here today without it. That is for sure. So I always knew from a fairly young age that I wanted to be an entrepreneur or have my own business. I think my husband would say it's because I don't like being told what to do, and I enjoy being part of decision making, I suppose. So throughout college, I had some ideas of what a potential company could be, but I often found my biggest frustration was that I have so many interests, like what should I be doing, and is this the right time? Am I the right person to do this? So I, after my master's degree, I found a great company, software technology company that I worked for about the first 5 years of my career. And that company is a startup out of Omaha. It has since been acquired as a joint venture between ADM and Cargill, which are two very large ag conglomerates. So it was exceptional experience, one, to really not coming from a technology background, I really fell in love with the process of that and the iterative approach that and the impact that technology can have, particularly in agriculture. So that was a great experience, but I also met some really phenomenal people and learned a lot about what it takes to take a company from startup to acquisition and scaling, and truthfully really learned about the pains that are associated with that whole process and experience. So that was just a really good start to my career and helped me really discover that it's okay that I have a lot of interests. What matters really to me is that I'm working on something that I find interesting and I'm excited and feel like I'm learning and growing, but also that I really enjoy the people who I'm working with. So I think that I can tolerate quite a bit in the grunt work and the day-to-day, as long as it's just a ton of fun to work with the people who are equally as excited. So that was a great experience and is what led me to my latest venture. I am a co-founder with a couple of former colleagues, actually, from that technology company that I was with in Omaha. And we are now working on automating tasks that are currently performed by employees, labor, in protein processing or meat processing. So Hannah and Jacqueline both talked about going direct to consumer. I'm sure many of us experienced a little bit of panic this spring during COVID-19 when there maybe wasn't meat on the counters, or you were being limited in terms of how much meat you could buy at the grocery store. So over the course of the last year, I've been working with my co-founder on just brainstorming some potential ideas to utilize technology, especially in agriculture. My co-founder's background is more on the technology side, and he has spent his last year out at MIT working on his MBA and has exceptional connections to robotics and mechanical engineers. So he's been really valuable in putting together the engineering talent who can actually carry out some of what we're working on. So we're really digging into the pain points of why that supply chain disruption happened. And in this particular case, what we've learned is that it boils down to the fact that we rely so much on individuals to complete these tasks that are very difficult, sometimes dangerous to do. And it's really tough to find enough people to be able to perform these tasks. And so we're interested in really addressing that pain point that exists in the meat supply chain. As Tom mentioned, we're just getting started in this space. So we are really just in the beginning points of validating the pain point, working through what our proposed solution is, and developing some key relationships with customers in the Nebraska area to help find the right product market fit and building out our team. So we're just getting started. I'm excited to learn from everyone on this panel, myself as well as kind of early in on this stage and process, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
Thank you. Great introductions. And I'm going to kick off with sort of a lead question for you guys. And I think jump in as you will. You know, this whole space of entrepreneurship on the front end oftentimes can just be viewed as like this sort of very exciting and won't this be fun kind of deal, right? And we have a tendency even to romanticize the concept of entrepreneurship. But each of you at some point in time, you know, in your career of starting a company, you encountered that probably that moment where it was either I've got to be in or I've got to walk away. And I would just love to hear a little bit about how you made that choice to go ahead and really move the business forward, and maybe a little bit about some of the challenges that you had to overcome, both maybe externally in terms of resources, et cetera, but also maybe internally to actually make that leap to go from this is a cool idea to we're going to deliver on this idea, because that's a major stepping stone. And I think people would be really curious about how you made that and how you dealt with sort of that swirl of emotions and thinking in your own heads as you went through that process. And whoever wants to jump on that question first, I'm happy to have you do that.
Well, I guess what I can say about that is, Tom, is that you know, when I started the company early on, I think the hardest part about it at that time for me was I tend to have a comfort zone of technology. You know, that's my comfort zone area. And early on, in fact, you were the one who suggested to me that I should try applying for a startup accelerator, right? And that actually ended up being probably one of the pivotal things for me, and actually one of the hardest things. And that is because, like I said, my comfort zone is technology side of things. And so I was already, you know, diving into that technology area, and I thought I had everything figured out. And you know, going into the startup accelerator all of a sudden was difficult because, just like Jordan mentioned, I tend to, you know, be a little stubborn. I tend to think that I've got everything figured out. I don't want to be told what to do. And in the startup accelerator, they're like, well, drop all that technical stuff you're doing and go validate that whatever you're trying to do, actually people want it. And I was like, what do you mean people want it. Of course they want it. You know, it's this neat technology. Of course they want it. And so it was difficult because I had to get out of my comfort zone. And as I was out there talking to people, you know, like I mentioned, what I found out was really difficult for me to internalize, because all of a sudden I learned that, yeah, I was trying to solve the right problem, but my baby that I had developed, you know, my baby of applying this one technology to their problem, they didn't want that. And so all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, now I got to figure out something else. And figuring out that something else was really challenging, because I had to be told that I was wrong, and had to be told that what I was trying to do was not going to be successful if I kept going with it. And so what ended up really happening then at that point was one of the people that I was interviewing in my industry ended up volunteering to become one of the first investors into the product I was developing. And that was my jumping off point of, okay, I'm really on to something here, and now I got to focus on it.
Awesome. Thanks, Vishal. Others?
As for myself, transitioning from weddings in Omaha and Lincoln to a retail store here in Miller, South Dakota, was pretty rough. I screwed up the way I talked about my business at the beginning when I opened in Miller. I love doing weddings, and weddings are fabulous, and that's a major part of what our business does still. But switching to retail, to everyday stuff, I screwed that up, how I speak about my company. So like I said, I help people love each other better. That's what we do, whether it's your wedding or your grandma's funeral, your birthday, your anniversary. Clarifying that, because when I opened, I was like, well, I do weddings, I do flowers, we have gift store stuff, as you could probably see in the background. We have pretty things for your house. But yeah, figuring out how to clarify my message. Donald Miller always says that people don't buy the products that is the best. They don't buy the best product. They buy the product that they understand the fastest. And I have had to dig myself out of a big, deep hole that I dug myself this past year. So working on how to clarify how I talk about the company, your messaging, your website has been a huge hurdle this past year. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Jordan?
So I think one of the hurdles I've had to overcome is just the self-doubt and the resistance in my own mind. And so that's been, I don't have it figured out yet, but it's something that I'm more actively trying to address, and feeling like, do I have the right skill set to do this? Am I the right co-founder for this company? So I think that's certainly one hurdle. For some other reasons, the timing was right for me to exit my job that I had in Omaha on the software side. So if I were still trying to do that, I think I would, more that comfort zone probably would be a hurdle that I would have been facing. But just the timing of it just worked out. Couldn't have been any better. So I can dedicate and really move things along at a much faster rate had I maybe not be felt like I was being held back by a comfortable, good job. So those, I think, would be two things that have been hurdles that I'm either actively working on or that are no longer issues that have allowed me to accelerate, just really focusing on what it is that I want to be focused on.
Awesome. Thanks.
I'll second that a little bit. I think the internal struggle has been the biggest thing with me, and not necessarily if I'm the right person for it, but more so, am I doing the right things? So, for example, right now I have a huge freezer full of beef, and it's Christmas time coming up, so this is a good thing to be stocked up. But I'm like, am I doing the right marketing for it? Am I pushing this enough? So I think everything like that is my biggest hurdle I'm overcoming right now. And I think a lot of that comes with scaling and just understanding where you should be at during that time, and just learning as you go. And to go back to the first part of what you had asked with, how did you first start or take that first step? And I think the biggest thing is you just learn as you go. I started not doing very many, not selling very much beef in the beginning, and you learn from a lot of those mistakes. That I'm really glad I started small, and that might have been the position I was in too, while I was able to learn while I was in college. But I always have to remind myself, you learn as you go.
Awesome, thank you. So let me throw out another quick question. So in this process, right, there are resources or sources, assistance that shows up either in infrastructure, mentorship, coaching, whatever. So as you look at your individual companies and your own careers, what were the resources that you really leaned on and that maybe you would advise other aspiring entrepreneurs? Look, these are some resources, some sources of information, some areas of assistance that you really need to be aware of and go use them because it will make your life better. Any thoughts about that?
The number one resource that I can't speak enough about is reach out to mentors, reach out to experts in the industry that you are working in. We would not be, I mean, we're only 6 months into this, but we have had incredible access to really thought leaders and influencers in the industry that we're trying to, that we're focused on in our customers. And I cannot believe how quickly we have found that access. And it's truly because of the mentorships and advisors that we've had. So above all, I would encourage everyone to really just reach out to the people who are in the industry and in the business that you want to be in, and try and learn from them. Second to that, though, we are pursuing rather more from a funding and financial standpoint, like small business innovation and research grants. So this is probably more applicable to like the technology space, but both at the federal and in the state of Nebraska with the Department of Economic Development, as well as the Department of Agriculture, there are certainly programs and that are designed to support early stage startups as well. So reaching out to those people at those state entity levels, just to make them aware of what you're doing and seeing if there's potential or maybe some potential funding opportunities that won't necessarily cost you equity is something that is valuable to our company.
Awesome, thank you.
I second the mentor thing as well. When I first started, and I was really involved in the Engler Entrepreneurship Program, and then I also participated in Motion 2 years ago. And through those experiences, I met a ton of people and mentors who I had meetings with and learned so much from. And I think that's a great way to get started, is networking. And I never said no to a meeting, no matter what, my first few years, just so I could keep learning. So I'd recommend that. And then on top of that, I think podcasts and I listen to audiobooks all the time, and I've learned so much about marketing specifically, which is a huge pivot point in my business. And Jacqueline mentioned Donald Miller, and we actually split a business course on this. They had a buy one, get one free kind of thing. But I learned about StoryBrand through listening to an audiobook, and now our whole marketing side is off of that one specific book I found. So you can learn so much by just listening to those while you drive or other things. Definitely recommend.
Awesome. Vishal or Jacqueline, any thoughts about resourcing?
I'll piggyback off of the other two ladies. Everything they said is great, audiobooks, podcasts. But I was going to dig a little deeper into what Hannah mentioned about, so Hannah and I split this thing called Business Made Simple University. And I had a wonderful education through the Engler program. It was great. And that's what I needed for that time of life. But now I've been doing a lot of their Business Made Simple University classes, and it's real inexpensive. I think it's $275 a year. Hannah and I split it, so it's $140 or something. But that has been a huge game changer. And it's something that has made me money doing those classes and applying them to my business. It's made me money. So even though it's a little investment, it's paid off. It's paid off majorly. So yeah, I would go dig deeper into, if you're into Business Made Simple University, their classes are easy to take online. And then anything written by Seth Godin, books wise, I love his stuff. And I'm a huge EntreLeadership fan too. If you've ever heard of that, that's a Dave Ramsey business section. So EntreLeadership and how to handle people and business and stuff. Yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Vishal?
Yeah, so definitely, kind of agreeing with what's already been said, that mentorship's a big deal. And what I quickly learned is that the best mentors aren't the people with the answers. They're the people that ask you the right questions, so you can figure out the right answers. And then beyond that, what I would also say is just like going back to my example of talking to people in the industry and asking them the right questions, so you can quickly figure out, well, am I trying to build the right thing? Am I trying to solve the right problems? Well, the greatest resource I found, and it was through the InMotion Accelerator, was this website. It's called customerdevlabs.com. So it's customerdevlabs.com. And what I would say to everybody wanting to launch a product is, go read the section where it talks about how to conduct customer interviews. And that was probably the single most important thing that I learned early on in my process.
Awesome. So let me ask one more, and then we'll open it up for folks who are online with us. It's un-American, of course, to say that failure is the pathway, right? Because we're, right, never give up, always forward, right? We don't like to admit failure ever. But I'd be really interested in sort of how you learn to make peace with failure and mistakes, and how you learn to move past those things. Because I think this is true in every single business that I've ever been affiliated with in any way, shape, or form, either just through students or through my own experience or as an advisor to companies. How do you work through that little voice, or sometimes that great big voice in our head that says, don't mess up. If you mess up, you're done. So how do you get past that failure mindset to turn it into a growth opportunity?
I guess for me, keep showing up. October was a really rough month for me. I screwed up and then fell on my face. Just this past October, thankfully November came and it's gotten better. But it's just getting up and going to work every day. I screwed up a wedding, and over exaggerating how I fixed that was a huge helper. My customers just came back and spent a lot of money with me again, even though I screwed up their daughter's wedding. So yeah, I sent them their money back, and I sent them a gift box and handwritten thank you notes to all the moms and grandmas who were involved. But yeah, really over exaggerating your mistakes, and you just got to get up and go back to work the next day when you screw up.
Thanks, Jacqueline. There it is. I mean, that is like, own it and move on, right? And I think it's really exciting what you just said about, right, treat people right, the customer will come back to the table. There's actually back in the day, and there was a guy that advised auto dealers, and he said this tongue in cheek, but he said, what our real goal is to sell you a lemon so we can show you how good our service department is. And I think that's just so important, right? This whole service mentality, and it's challenging. But what a great story, and thanks so much for sharing that. Any of you other folks, what's your take in that space?
I think one thing that working in software development has taught me is that shipping frequently and often is very, very important, because you'll be getting feedback. And if you kind of work in a vacuum without getting that feedback from users or customers, you don't really know how or where you should be pivoting. So I don't know if I've ever really approached it as like, if this doesn't work, I'm failing, but just rather like, what can I learn from what I've done so far, and where do I need to pivot in order to really meet that customer expectation or that market fit. So I think if we hold ourselves to the unrealistic expectation that everything has to be shipped in perfect form and fashion, we'll never really get started or make progress. So that's how I approach it, is everything is up for feedback and an opportunity to learn and pivot when I need to.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. There's a great story from, I'm a Coloradan and a skier. So there's a great story about Howard Head, the guy that founded Head Skis. And way back when, he was not a skier. He had his first skiing experience was awful. He had a terrible day, and he blamed it all on the equipment, right? Which probably was correct in those days. And he just went into this whole mode of like, he was going to fix that industry. And he would send a new design to these ski instructors in Stowe, Vermont over and over and over again. And every week they'd send him back to him broken or messed up. And he said, it was like 30 cycles of prototyping before he actually got a ski that somebody liked. So I think I think that like learn like what went wrong and learn and go. And I just think industry and so many different channels are just filled with that kind of example. Other thoughts about that whole space?
For me, I've kind of had to learn. Immediately, my mind goes to how can we make this better right now and avoid it in the future, which I think is both great things. So one, the customer service aspect, I loved hearing that from Jacqueline too. Those are great notes to take. But like, how can I immediately make this better for the customer? And then after that, I try to come up with like tactical processes to put into place so that something doesn't happen again. So whether that's me shipping them the wrong cuts of beef or something like that, I now have 3 points where I check that throughout my process of shipping boxes. But I do think sometimes I immediately go to that tactical point instead of like reflecting more on or getting too hard on myself and not like thinking about the growth that comes out of that instead. So I think both are really important factors.
Thanks.
Yeah, and what I would say is that testing assumptions at every possible stage that you can do along the growth of your company is really important. So early on, any assumptions that you have of what you're building and who your customers are, test every little thing out you possibly can, and then continue to test everything you possibly can. Because if you do that, then you have a lot of small, little failures that you can quickly and easily bounce back from, and then you can quickly make progress that way, rather than living in your bubble and going down this path and not having one huge failure.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And in our program, we spend a lot of time talking about fail forward, fail fast, fail cheap, and then learn like crazy, right? From each step and misstep, just learn something and codify it in your program. So let's open it up for other folks. Any questions you'd like to ask our panel? We can take these off of Q&A, or you can just chime in verbally, I think. So if anybody's got a question, we'd love to hear that. Let me see what I've got in Q&A down here. So here's a question about reselling products. Is the reselling space a good business idea? And does anybody have any experience or background in that? And then negotiating price. I think even if it's not in the reselling business, how did you work out your pricing, and how do you protect your pricing from those who want to just negotiate continuously for the lower price? Of course, I'm sure, Vishal, you never ran into anybody who wanted to go for a cheaper price, right? Love to hear anybody's feedback on that question.
Well, I don't know anything about reselling a product, so I can't necessarily say much about that. But what I would say is go back to that whole testing assumptions thing. So, if you think that reselling this product is a good idea, well, go talk to those people who you think are their potential customers for it, and ask them questions about why this product should be interesting to them, or why would they want to, pay money for it, and test all that out before you actually try to resell it to them, and make sure that you actually have something that they want, and that they're willing to pay for. So I would start there on that one.
I'd also ask all of you sort of, and I know, Jordan, you guys are maybe not yet into pricing at all because your company's, really early in the game. But for Hannah and Jack, I'd be just super interested. How did you establish a mindset about pricing that didn't let that Midwestern thing, if we grow up in sort of that number one, we have to be really nice, and nice means like don't make any money. And we get caught up in commodity thinking, right? Like, cheap price, that's the way to go. If I can just undercut them on price, I'll win. How did you overcome that? And how do you approach pricing? You don't have to give away your trade secrets, but in general, how did you get yourself geared up to where you priced for value?
Well, Tom, I think you hit it there at the last. I mean, I sell value, especially with my wedding work. I don't sell flowers. I sell the peace of mind that your wedding's going to be beautiful, and then you don't have to worry about the flowers. I mean, flowers are a headache to deal with. It's a headache of a business to be in. Things change all the time. So there's that value that I sell, especially in the weddings, that you don't have to worry about sourcing things, keeping flowers cold, where you're going to put them. So that's a huge change that I've made over the years with selling, is just selling the value. With weddings, when I moved up to Miller, when I was in Omaha and Lincoln, people bid out, and like, oh, it's going to be this much from me, and then they go to floral. Is kind of a weird business to be in. You can always find it cheaper somewhere else. And then I moved up here, and nobody else does weddings. So I switched my model to make sure it's touchable for everybody, to offer 3 price points that all make me money. And a small bouquet, medium, or large, and the products we put in each of those are different. And then let them pick out. They get to pick what they, if they want the small or the medium. Of course, they're going to want at least a medium or large. So that's helped. You just have to test it out. You have to make money and value your time. I charge a lot of money for my time. For a designer, of course not, I'm a young designer. I've been doing it for 10 years. So I charge what a 10-year-old designer should charge. Of course, I'll be able to raise that as I get older and more experienced in the design world. So charging for my time, super valuable. I flip a lot of products too in the store. I find something here, and then I might add some silk flowers to it and candles, and then all of a sudden you have a centerpiece that you can use year after year. That's super profitable for me. In the resale, anything where I can take something and add value to it. This is a centerpiece. You're going to spend $300 this one time, but you're going to use it for 7 years. So I got to make my money off your one-time purchase here. So that's good. Pricing formulas, I use a couple different ones. And that's just industry kind of standard. So learn your industry that you're in. Retail pricing can change between clothing, boutiques, floral, home decor. All of those pricing formulas are different. You should be able to just ask people. Hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome. Thanks. Hannah, how about you?
My industry is a little different because you have the store prices. Always can find those cheaper at the grocery stores, and so you have to add a lot of the same value that Jacqueline was just talking about. Ours is like quality of taste and experience is what we are trying to do. So as long as I can manage those 2 things and feel good about those, then that helps me feel good about the pricing as well. As far as pricing strategy goes, something I'm still really trying to work on, and we actually are going through right now a price change again. specifically with like beef cattle, in my cattle, it gets very confusing to find like specific input costs on every single animal and try to find the average, just because they are all like such a range. And especially through moving to a new location too, that's been a huge difference in trying to figure out every single cost and find that break even. A mentor who was in this industry once told me that if you are going to, so you should price all of your beef cuts so that your primals, or like your high quality steaks, cover all of your cost, and then all the other things on top of that are what your profit is going to be. So that helps. I also price check against my competitors and have like a whole spreadsheet of probably close to 25 competitors and what the average is and how I compare to that, and really pay attention to that too. But the biggest thing I think is just knowing your break even, and that's a hard lesson I've had to learn the past few years. And even like selling beef jerky, I didn't realize, or I didn't calculate the dehydration and how it goes from a pound to 50% in my cost. And I was literally losing money on every single one I sold for a little bit. So those hard lessons, but just having somebody to look at it too, I think is huge, because I was trying to do everything myself and I make a lot of mistakes. So implementing those processes to have somebody else look at it has been really helpful.
Awesome. Let me go down here to the Q&A board. So here's a question. How do you face the fear of having a specific market? I have and Samantha says, I have a business idea that is catered more towards young women, and that intimidates me because I do not want to ostracize others. So you might just take a stab at that, and then ask Samantha for any clarifications you might have, and she can get back to us either live or type in an answer back to us. And I think that how do you face the fear of a specific market, right? Like saying, okay, I'm not going after everybody who might buy flowers. I'm going to go after only this slice, right? That and maybe it's a slice of really premium purchasers. How do you get past that? Oh crap, I've got to be able to sell a bunch of volume just to survive.
Well, I know a few things. I would start by reading Seth Godin's books, any of his books. What is it? Maybe any of his books. I'm reading This Is Marketing. Read that one maybe. At the moment, I'm reading it for the second time. But Seth Godin talks about your smallest viable audience. And, so these are the people. Okay, so you're looking for people like us do things like this. That's your audience. So people that like my store often carry large handbags. And, they have their little nieces getting married, and they tell them about how we can make their wedding more beautiful. These are the ladies who have the money to call and order a nice centerpiece, or their friend's sick. So, I'm delivering to people who are sick all the time because they just want them to feel loved and cared for. But it's not for everybody. Not everyone likes flowers. Some people really hate flowers and they think they're a waste. I don't think that. But that's why I'm in the business that I'm in. So yeah, it's just not for everyone, and people can take it or leave it. I have people who really love my shop, and other people who they're like, oh, it's nice, but not for me. And that's okay. It shouldn't be for everyone, because if I tried to make it for everyone, it'd be a mess. And I'd be doing stuff I don't want to do. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
No, I think that's really good insight, Jacqueline, that this whole notion, with young entrepreneurs, we'll ask them like in really early stage and at the university level, like, well, so who's going to want this? And I love the answer that comes back, oh, everybody. Well, like, really? and if they all do you really want them all? What about those who want to pay, who want to negotiate every price? What about those who are going to wear your service department into absolute a blithering mess because you could give them the world and they're still going to complain? Is that really what you want? And I think this narrowing of the market, it's scary because we think, well, I'm losing customers. Well, I think that's I think that's actually flawed thinking, because, you know, Vishal, there are folks that right, we're never going to be interested in quantified ags protocols, but boy, the ones that did, they were the ones that deserved your attention, right? So you might even weigh in a little bit about that as you kind of sorted through that marketplace where you found out that not everybody was the same kind of operator and had the same kind of needs.
Yeah, you know, definitely. I mean, the idea behind this being that you're not going to be, you know, if you're trying to target everybody, you're not targeting anybody. And so the more specific you can be, the better, because for every product, for every startup, for every business, you have to have a beachhead where you can tackle your market from. And so yeah, you know, we got approached a lot of times of, well, you know, your product could work for this part of the industry, or it could work for that part of the industry, you know, or maybe it could work for, you know, this whole other area. Well, we had to work through all that because, one, we were a small company. We can't possibly target all those areas. So how do you select the area to focus on? And, you know, our approach was that we looked at, in our industry, feedlots was where the greatest part of the cattle, you know, most of the cattle will end up in a feedlot at some point. And there's only the top 2,000 feedlots in our country contain the greatest amount of cattle in our country. So it made sense from that perspective, because rather than targeting lots of smaller operations spread out all over the country, we could target some of the biggest operations in a, you know, smaller geographical area, and that way we could tackle the biggest part of the industry that way. So that made sense. But then even within that, just like you said, you know, we quickly found out that, well, a feedlot's not a feedlot in the sense that not every feedlot's going to want what we do, and that is, you know, what we had to figure out is that, okay, what types of feedlots really want this product? And what we, you know, found is that, well, the more progressive ones are the ones that are going to be more willing to spend money on this type of solution. And so it took us a while to learn, well, what does that even mean? What does more progressive mean in our industry? And you know, we had to identify all those things. And then once we identified it, it made targeting those types of feedlots so much easier, because now we had a set of parameters to identify quickly, well, this feedlot may not be the progressive type that we're really going after. So let's not waste our time trying to go after them. Let's instead put our focus, our efforts on these other feedlots that do seem like a good fit. So I don't know if that helped answer what you were asking there.
Absolutely. And I think that's we get so caught up in trying to be everything to everybody at a company that it ultimately doesn't work, right? Because you end up spread so thin that and applying the 80-20 rule, right? Figure out, you know, which, and sometimes it's like what 20% of your customers are actually generating 80% of your revenue. And sometimes in a market, you can have that kind of impact. And boy, you better love those 20% like there's no tomorrow, because they're the vast majority of your market, right? And I think Jacqueline said that really well, right? There are people who are really into to what she does, and they buy the why, they buy the what Jacqueline's company actually does for people. But she doesn't spend a lot of time on people who are like, flowers are a waste, right? Because you're trying to change the fixed mind. Been there, done that. Rarely works. Well, we're getting down to kind of the last little bit of time. So what let's do is just kind of as our wrap up, if each of you would just offer up one strong bit of advice that maybe we haven't covered for aspiring entrepreneurs, that you would offer up as we wrap our panel up, and whoever would like to go first would certainly be fine. I have no desire to control the order. So one last bit of advice from each of you.
I'll jump in. I think my biggest thing is just start today. Start testing and validating. Start asking those customers questions. Just take that first step, and you'll learn so much as you go.
Thanks, Hannah.
So one of the things I learned in the progress of my company is that, and this is something I had to learn pretty early on, was that I couldn't possibly do everything, because if I tried to do everything that for my company, well, it would have never gone anywhere. So it just illustrated the importance of partnering with people and partnering with the right people to help you achieve your goals.
Awesome. Thanks, Vishal. Really, really great advice. And those right partners and right co-founders and first employees, so critical. Jordan or Jacqueline, any thoughts?
Those are great pieces of wisdom and advice. So I would echo that, and just know that you don't have to have all the answers today, and it's an iterative process that you'll learn and grow. So just don't be afraid to get started with what you are feeling called to do to meet a need in the market.
Yes, I would wrap up with, I mean, everybody had good stuff. I mean, you just got to do it and do it and do it. But also find people who are better than you and watch what they do. Ask if you can go learn from them. Like, I mean, Hannah did her internship in California. I studied under three really great designers. And I just asked if I could come help work for them, pay me to teach, like you pay me and I'll learn from you. I'll do the grunt work here. Yeah, learning from people who are better than you, keeping your eye on, businesses that you want to be like, and watch what they're doing. Watch what they're doing at home. Watch, I mean, I keep track on Instagram and Facebook. It's not like creepy stalker, but, yeah, just keep track of what people are doing who are better than you at what you want to do, and see what they're doing. Read, some people are like, oh, I read for an hour a day. I can do that because I don't have kids yet in my life. And yeah, I don't know. See what people are doing that are better than you. So.
Awesome. Thank you. And so just a quick summary. I mean, if as I listen today, the big take homes for me are, one, your learning's never going to stop. You don't arrive. You just keep working at it, and it's continuous and it's iterative. Secondly, is prototype. Don't wait and try to deliver the perfect solution, because it never happens. You want perfect proof of that, go back and look at the very first version of Facebook. It was absolutely, I don't know why anybody even thought it was going to work, because the first version was terrible. Then the third thing that I think is really powerful in all this is, sooner or later, you got to let that customer's voice be in the room. And that means setting your own ego aside to do that. And that's really hard, right? But here's the deal. If you are in entrepreneurship and you end up making a product that you love and nobody else buys, you have a hobby, not a business. And the name of the game is to turn this into wealth creation. And then the last piece is lots of resources out there. Find mentors, ask people. The great thing about the place we live here in the Midwest, people will help you. There's so many, like, I think all four of our panelists, I've watched your careers, and people have just stepped up, and you have also, the four of you have stepped up to help others. So you're paying it forward. You were all helped early in your careers, and you're doing that now. And so it's a great ecosystem to be in. Feel free to drop us. If you've got follow-up questions, you can certainly email me at tfield2@unl.edu, and I'll pass the questions on to any of the panelists. It's been tons of fun to be with you. Thanks so much, Omaha and Do Space, for sponsoring this. Let's keep working hard. Let's build something cool, and just go out there and get started. Thanks so much. Everybody have a great day. Thanks to our panelists.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. And thanks
everybody
for joining us today. Just really quickly, and Tom, if you need to get going, that is totally okay. But to our few attendees that are still here, if you would like to rewatch this, you are more than, we usually post our webinars on our Do Space YouTube channel. So this should be up probably maybe by the end of the week. maybe by next week, at least by next week. And you can also see part 1 through 3 on our YouTube channel, Do Space YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys. Have a great day.